The Zephyrian armada drifted through the void like a school of luminous jellyfish, their crystalline hulls pulsing with blue-green bioluminescence. Command Carrier Eternities edge dominated the formation, its angular spires shimmering with contained energy, a cathedral of living crystal and cold calculation. High Commander Zackle observed the tactical display with detached amusement. His chitinous fingers traced the holographic projection, where a single blip flickered insignificant, almost laughable. A human vessel, alone. The thought slithered through his mind, accompanied by the faintest ripple of irritation across his neural crest. The humans had always been predictable, emotional, reckless, prone to self-destruction. Their ships were crude things, all blunt edges and roaring engines, lacking the elegant efficiency of Zephyrian biotech. And yet, here one was, drifting just outside weapons range, as if daring them to notice. Analysis, Zackle commanded. His voice a modulated hum, the harmonics vibrating through the bridge's crystalline resonance chambers. At the sensor array, Quilex, the fleet's chief xenologist, adjusted his ocular implants. The lenses whirred, refracting light as they processed data. His mandibles twitched, an involuntary sign of unease. Designation, UNSC Perseverance, Quilex reported. A mid-tier cruiser by their standards. No escort, no reinforcements detected within 3 light minutes. Zackle exhaled through his ventral vents, the sound a soft chime of dismissal. A scout then, or a sacrifice. The bridge crew murmured in agreement, their bioluminescent markings flickering in amusement. The humans had done this before, sent lone ships as distractions, as if sheer stubbornness could compensate for inferior firepower. It never worked, but Quilex did not relax. His secondary eyes dilated, absorbing the scan data with growing unease. Commander, Therese, something off about this one. Zackle's crest flattened slightly. Elaborate, Quilex hesitated. The human ship wasn't broadcasting the usual chaotic energy signatures of their kind. No roaring plasma drives, no erratic power spikes. Instead, it hummed, quiet, controlled, almost predatory in its stillness. And then there was the armor. Standard human plating was thick, but crude, layered steel and ceramics. This ship's hull was different. Dark, absorbent, scans skittered off it like water on oil, refusing to penetrate. Shields, Zackle demanded. None detectable, Quilex admitted, but Quilex's voice dropped to a subsonic whisper. It's waiting. Aboard the Perseverance, Colonel Rachel Weir watched the alien fleet through the tactical feed, her fingers resting lightly on the command console. The Zephyrians were beautiful, in their way, gleaming, geometric, utterly convinced of their own superiority. She smiled. They hadn't noticed the traps yet. Corporal Daniel Kim adjusted his headset, his voice calm. All systems nominal. They're scanning us, but they're not seeing the real package. Rachel nodded. The Perseverance wasn't just a ship, it was a hunter, and humanity had been persistence hunting long before they ever touched the stars. The Zephyrian armada hung in the void, like a constellation of shattered glass, their crystalline warships pulsing with blue-green energy. High Commander Zackle watched the single human vessel through the holographic display, his mandibles twitching in irritation. It was too small, too quiet. A mistake surely. Reconfirm fleet positioning, he ordered, his voice resonating through the bridge's luminescent chamber. His officers complied, their delicate chitinous fingers dancing across translucent control panels. The data shimmered in the air, a flawless formation, an unbreakable net. 300 warships against 1. That thing out there refused to behave like prey. Quilex, the fleet's chief scientist, stood motionless beside him, his faceted eyes locked onto the scans. The readings remain inconsistent, he murmured. Zackle flexed his claws. Explain. Quilex hesitated. A Zephyrian did not admit uncertainty lightly. Its energy signature is erratic, not dormant, but suppressed, like a predator holding its breath. A ripple of unease passed through the bridge. Zackle dismissed it with a flick of his crest. A single human ship cannot threaten us. But the Perseverance didn't move. Didn't flee, it simply waited, its dark hull drinking in the starlight. Inside the human vessel, the air hummed with restrained energy. Colonel Rachel Weir leaned back in her command chair, her gaze fixed on the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet was a masterpiece of precision, crystalline formations, perfect symmetry. Every ship positioned for maximum firepower and utterly predictable. "Kim," she said, her voice low. "Status on the shadow systems?" Corporal Daniel Kim didn't look up from his console. "Operational and undetected. They're still painting us with active scans, but the dampeners are holding." Rachel exhaled slowly. The Zephyrians had expected panic, retreat, maybe a desperate transmission begging for mercy. Instead, she had given them silence, a predator's silence. The Perseverance wasn't built for head-on assaults. It was built for endurance. Every system, every circuit, every gram of armor had been refined for one purpose: to outlast. Humanity had learned persistence hunting on the savannas of Earth, chasing prey until heat and exhaustion did the work for them. Now, they had brought that same principle to the stars. Rachel's fingers traced the edge of the console. The Zephyrians had numbers, superior firepower, but they had never been hunted before. On the Zephyrian flagship, Quilek's unease deepened. The human ship's reactor output was wrong, too low for a vessel of its size, yet scans showed no signs of power depletion. It was as if the energy were being diverted. "Commander," he said abruptly, "recommend immediate long-range strike." Zackle's crest flared in amusement. "You fear a single ship?" Quilek's secondary eyes flickered. "I fear what we cannot see." A tense silence followed. Then the Perseverance moved, not toward them, not away. A micro jump, barely a kilometer, but executed with such precision that the Zephyrian targeting system stuttered, recalibrating in confusion. Zackle hissed, "Lock weapons." The human ship vanished from scans entirely. For 3 heartbeats, there was nothing. A pulse, like the echo of a drum in an empty cavern. The Perseverance reappeared, closer, much closer. Quilek's blood ran cold. They hadn't lost the human ship. It had let itself be seen, and now the hunt had truly begun. Section Fe. The first bite, the pulse reverberated through the crystalline lattice of the Zephyrian flagship, a deep subsonic thrum that made Quilek's chitin vibrate uncomfortably. His tertiary eyes, normally reserved for detecting ultraviolet shifts, flared wide as the Perseverance reappeared, now positioned behind their forward escorts, not just closer inside their formation. Zackle's command spine stiffened, his bioluminescent veins pulsing a furious teal. "How?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the sudden tension on the bridge. Quilek's claws skittered across the holographic interface, pulling up the last trajectory data. The human ship hadn't performed a standard micro jump, it had slid, as if space itself had bent around it, allowing the vessel to slip between the layers of reality like a blade between ribs. The Perseverance hung there, silent, its matte black hull drinking in the ambient starlight. No running lights, no energy signatures, just a silhouette darker than the void itself. A single point on its hull flickered. Quilek's breath caught. The human ship wasn't powering up. It was waking up. Colonel Rachel Weir exhaled slowly, her fingers resting lightly on the tactical display. Around her, the Perseverance's bridge hummed with quiet intensity, the crew moving with the precision of a well-oiled machine. "Status?" she murmured. Corporal Kim's voice was steady. "All systems green. Zephyrian escorts are still reorienting. Their targeting arrays are scrambling to lock onto us." A faint smile tugged at Weir's lips. "Good." The Perseverance wasn't just stealthy, it was forgettable. Human engineers had long ago realized that true stealth in space wasn't about hiding signatures. It was about being ignored. The ship's outer layer was coated in metamaterials that scattered scans, not by absorbing them, but by making them uninteresting. To the Zephyrian sensors, the Perseverance registered as background noise, a glitch in the cosmic static, and now, nestled between their escorts, the humans had done the one thing the Zephyrians never expected. They had stopped. Zakel's crest flared again, this time in frustration. Fire at will. Destroy it. The nearest escort vessels, sleek crystalline destroyers shaped like predatory fish, swiveled, their bioluminescent cannons charging with a high-pitched whine. The weapons didn't fire. Quilek's secondary eyes narrowed. "Commander, their targeting systems are refusing the lock," Zakel hissed. "Override." "It's not a malfunction," Quilek said softly, dread creeping into his voice. "The human ship is jamming them. Not with noise, not with interference, with silence." The Perseverance was broadcasting a signal so perfectly calibrated to the Zephyrian sensors that it canceled their own targeting pulses. The cannons couldn't fire because, as far as they were concerned, there was nothing to shoot at. Weir watched the frozen escorts on the display, her fingers tapping idly against the armrest. "Colonel?" Kim asked. "Give them a moment," she said. "Let them realize what's happening." Humans had a term for this: persistence hunting. You didn't chase, you didn't charge, you waited until the prey exhausted itself, until it understood. The first shot, when it came, wasn't from the Perseverance. It was from a Zephyrian escort, firing blindly, its plasma lance slicing through the void in a desperate, unguided burst. The beam missed by kilometers. Weir's smile widened. "Now," she said, the Perseverance moved, its railguns hidden until now beneath retractable armor panels, unfurled like the claws of a waking predator. The first projectile struck the nearest escort dead center, punching through its crystalline hull with contemptuous ease. The second followed, half a second later. Then the third, each round fired with surgical precision, no wasted energy, no grand explosions, just impact. The escort ship shuddered, its bioluminescent veins flickering erratically before going dark. Dead in the void, Quilek's blood ran cold. The humans hadn't just attacked. They had demonstrated. And now, the Zephyrian Armada knew this wasn't a battle. It was a hunt, and humanity had just taken the first bite section Fae. Chasing ghosts, the void between stars was never truly silent. Zakel knew this. His command throne pulsed with the heartbeat of his flagship, the luminous will, its crystalline veins thrumming with blue-green energy. The bridge crew moved in hushed precision, their chitinous fingers dancing across holographic interfaces, their antennae twitching with nervous energy. They had expected a massacre. Instead, they were being herded. The human ship, Perseverance, their intercepted transmissions called it, was a specter in the dark. It flickered in and out of sensor range, its heat signatures masked, its energy emissions dampened to near invisibility. Every time the Zephyrian fleet locked onto its position, it vanished, only to reappear moments later in a different vector, its railguns already primed. Quilek's mandibles clicked in agitation as he studied the tactical display. The human vessel was small, barely a third the size of a Zephyrian escort. Yet it moved with a predator's grace, slipping between the Armada's formations like a blade between ribs. "High Commander," Quilek murmured, his voice a whisper of static through his vocal membranes. "They're maneuvering. It defies physics." Zakel's crest, spines flattened against his skull. He had seen human ships before, clumsy, brutish things, all thrust and no finesse. But this was something else. The Perseverance wasn't just evading. It was luring. Inside the human vessel, Colonel Rachel Weir exhaled slowly, her fingers resting on the tactical console. The bridge was dim, lit only by the glow of holographic displays and the faint hum of life support. Around her, her crew worked in silence, their movements precise, their focus absolute. Corporal Daniel Kim's voice was a quiet murmur over the comm. "They're taking the bait, Colonel. Escorts breaking formation to pursue." Weir didn't smile, didn't need to. The Zephyrians had assumed their numbers meant safety, that a single human ship was nothing more than a desperate last stand. They were wrong. "Execute Phase 2, she said. The Perseverance pivoted, its thrusters flaring as it angled toward the nearest gas giant. The Zephyrian escorts followed, their crystalline hulls shimmering as they gave chase, their plasma lances charging, and then the human ship vanished. Not into stealth, into the planet's shadow. Quilek's frills flared in alarm. "Dive, they've disappeared." Zackel's claws tightened around his command staff. "Impossible, scan again." The sensors whirred, their bioluminescent tendrils pulsing as they swept the void. No energy, no debris, just emptiness. A single railgun round, fired from the gas giant's upper atmosphere, punched through the lead escort's bridge. The ship crumpled, its crystalline structure shattering like glass. Before the Zephyrians could react, the Perseverance emerged from the planet's magnetic field, its thrusters burning white, hot as it streaked toward the next target. Quilek's mind reeled. Humans weren't supposed to hide in gravity wells. Their ships weren't built for atmospheric turbulence, weren't designed to withstand the crushing pressure of a gas giant's outer layers. The Perseverance had done it, not just survived. Zackel's blood ran cold. This wasn't warfare. This was persistence hunting, and the prey had just realized it was being stalked. Section Fae. The marathon begins. The Perseverance moved like a ghost. It wasn't just the speed, though. That alone was terrifying. Its thrusters burning at impossible angles, skimming the upper atmosphere of the gas giant in a way no Zephyrian ship could replicate. It was the silence. No energy spikes, no reactor flare. Just the cold, calculated trajectory of a predator that had learned to breathe in the dark. Zackel's command spire hummed with frantic activity, the crystalline walls reflecting the panicked flicker of his officers' bioluminescent markings. His claws flexed against the smooth surface of his console, the organic material yielding slightly under the pressure. This was not how it was supposed to go. The human ship had vanished into the gas giant's magnetic storms, emerging only to strike a single precise hit, then gone again before the fleet could retaliate. It was a tactic the Zephyrians had never encountered. Their warfare was built on overwhelming force, on the luminous might of their crystalline armadas, on the certainty that no species could outlast them in a battle of attrition. But the humans weren't fighting a battle. They were running a marathon. Quilek's sensor array pulsed with frantic energy, its tendrils writhing as it struggled to lock onto the Perseverance. The readings made no sense. The ship's heat signature flickered in and out of existence, its energy output masked by the gas giant's turbulent storms. Zephyrian vessels were living constructs, their power cores pulsing with the steady rhythm of electric currents. They could not simply turn off. They could not hide. Yet the human ship did both. A new alert flashed across Quilek's display, a thermal spike, deep in the planet's upper atmosphere. The Perseverance had fired again. This time, the round struck an escort's primary power nexus. The crystalline latticework of the ship's core flared brilliant blue, green before collapsing inward, the energy feedback rippling through its sister vessels like a shockwave. Zackel's mandibles twitched. They were being dismantled, not in a single glorious clash, but piece by piece, system by system. The humans weren't trying to win. They were trying to endure. Inside the Perseverance, Colonel Rachel Weir exhaled slowly, her fingers resting lightly on the tactical display. The ship's interior was dim, lit only by the soft glow of emergency lighting and the occasional flicker of a console. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and sweat. They had been running for hours. The Zephyrians had numbers. They had firepower, but they didn't have patience. And humanity had nothing but. Corporal Daniel Kim's voice was quiet over the comm. Another hit confirmed. Their formation's starting to fracture. Weir nodded. Good. Keep them guessing. The Perseverance wasn't built for prolonged engagements. Its armor was thick, its weapons brutal, but it had never been meant to stand against an entire fleet. Yet here it was, not because it could win, but because it could last. Zakel's fleet adjusted, their formations tightening, their crystalline hulls shimmering as they activated full defensive protocols. They were learning, adapting, but the Perseverance was already moving again. It dove deeper into the gas giant's storms, its hull groaning under the pressure, its systems straining. Human engineering was a patchwork of desperation, overclocked reactors, jury-rigged heat sinks, armor plates welded together from salvaged wreckage. It shouldn't have worked, but it did, because humans didn't care about should, they cared about did. Quilec sensors screamed a warning. The Perseverance had emerged again, this time from the planet's shadow, its railguns already charging. Zakel braced. The shot never came. Instead, the human ship turned, not in retreat. In invitation, the realization struck Zakel like a plasma lance. The humans weren't just surviving, they were leading. And the Zepyrians, for all their might, had no choice but to follow. The Perseverance streaked through the void, its engines burning at critical thresholds, bleeding heat like an open wound behind it. The Zepyrian armada surged forward, crystalline warships pulsing with blue-green energy as they gave chase. Zakel's mandibles twitched in frustration. This wasn't combat. This wasn't even war. This was hunting. And the humans were the hunters. The realization settled into his exoskeleton like a creeping frost. The Perseverance wasn't fleeing. It was luring. Every erratic course correction, every feigned engine sputter, every desperate-looking maneuver was a carefully calculated provocation. The human vessel was dragging them deeper into the system, away from the gas giant's cover, into open space where the Zepyrians' numerical advantage should have been absolute. Yet something in Zakel's thorax tightened, because humans didn't fight fair. Quilec sensor arrays flickered with frantic energy. The Perseverance had altered trajectory again, its thrusters flaring as it banked hard toward a debris field, the shattered remnants of an ancient moon, now a graveyard of fractured rock and frozen metal. A perfect ambush point. Zakel's claws flexed against the command console. "High Commander." Quilec buzzed, his voice laced with unease. "Their behavior is predictable," Zakel interrupted. "They seek cover, they are wounded." But the words tasted hollow. Humans didn't hide. They waited. Colonel Rachel Weir exhaled slowly, her fingers dancing across the Perseverance's tactical display. "Kim," she said, voice steady, status. Corporal Daniel Kim didn't look up from his console. His hands moved with the precision of a surgeon, adjusting power flows, rerouting shield harmonics, monitoring the Zepyrians' pursuit vectors, shields at Fey railguns charged, but overheating, engine 3's about to tap out. He paused. They're still following. A ghost of a smile touched Weir's lips. The Perseverance plunged into the debris field, its battered hull scraping against jagged rock. Behind it, the Zepyrian fleet hesitated, just for a moment, before committing to the chase. They shouldn't have. Zakel's ship shuddered as it entered the debris field, its crystalline hull reflecting the dim starlight. The Perseverance was ahead, weaving through the wreckage like a wounded animal. Too obvious, Quilec's sensors suddenly flared. "High Commander," the warning came too late. The Perseverance spun on its axis, its railguns already firing, not at the lead ship, not at the command vessel, but at the unstable asteroid directly behind it. The impact was catastrophic. The asteroid shattered, its fragments becoming a storm of shrapnel tearing through the Zepyrian formation. Ships veered, shields flared, crystalline hulls cracked under the barrage. The Perseverance's engines roared to life, not in retreat, but in a full burn assault vector, streaking back through the chaos it had created. Zakel's blood ran cold, The humans weren't running. They were attacking. Kim's fingers flew across his console. Shields failing. Hold them, Weir ordered, her voice iron. The Perseverance's railguns fired again, this time targeting the nearest Superior cruiser's power core. The shot punched through weakened shields, detonating deep within the vessel's crystalline heart. Blue-green energy erupted from the breach, the ship listing as its systems failed. Another cruiser turned to engage, only for the Perseverance to roll beneath its firing arc, its ventral plasma lances searing into the enemy's underbelly. Zackle watched in horror as his fleet, his invincible armada, was systematically dismantled by a single ship that refused to die. Quilek's voice was barely a whisper. They planned this. Zackle didn't respond because he already knew. The humans had let them chase, had led them here, had turned the Zepyrian's own pursuit into a weapon against them. And now, as the Perseverance carved through his fleet like a blade through silk, Zackle understood the terrible truth. This wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration, and humanity had just proven it could outfight, outthink, and outlast anything the galaxy threw at them. Section Fae. The fatigue equation, the Perseverance moved like a living thing, a predator that had finally turned on its pursuers. Its hull, scorched and pitted from hours of relentless combat, pulsed with the dull glow of overtaxed systems. Yet it did not slow. It did not falter. Zackle's mandibles twitched as he watched the human vessel weave through the wreckage of his fleet. The tactical display before him was a nightmare of flickering sigils, each one marking another lost ship. The Perseverance had no right to still be functional. It had taken hits that would have shattered a Zepyrian dreadnought, yet it fought on, its crew somehow enduring the impossible strain. Quilek's claws trembled as he adjusted the bioscanner, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the erratic pulse of the ship's energy cores. Their physiology, it doesn't make sense, he murmured. Their adrenaline response is sustained. They don't fatigue like we do. Zackle didn't need the data to confirm it. He could see it in the way the human ship moved. No hesitation, no wasted motion. Every maneuver was precise, every counterattack brutal in its efficiency. The humans weren't just enduring, they were thriving in the chaos. A fresh wave of dread settled in his thorax. This wasn't just a battle of firepower, it was a battle of endurance, and the Zepyrians were losing. Inside the Perseverance, Colonel Rachel Weir exhaled slowly, her fingers dancing across the tactical console. The ship shuddered around her, another near miss rocking the deck. Warning glyphs flared crimson in her peripheral vision. Shield integrity at Fae. Reactor stress critical. Multiple hull breaches sealed under emergency protocols. None of it mattered. They had trained for this. Remember, the old Earthbound instructors had drilled into them. War isn't about who hits hardest. It's about who gets up one more time than the other guy. She glanced at Corporal Kim, his face streaked with sweat and soot, his hands steady on the weapons array. No panic, no hesitation, just the cold, relentless focus of a soldier who had long since accepted the stakes. Another cruiser breaking formation, Kim reported, voice flat. Their command ships pulling back. Weir's lips curled. Fear was a weapon too. Zackle's flagship, the Eternal Radiance, pulsed with distress signals as it retreated behind a screen of sacrificial escorts. The crystalline spires of its command nexus flickered erratically, their once pristine glow now dimmed by damage. They're hurting us, Quilek realized, his voice hollow. Cutting off our escape vectors. Zackle didn't answer. The truth was worse than Quilek understood. This wasn't just tactical maneuvering, it was psychological warfare. The humans had let them believe they were the hunters. Now, they were proving they had been the apex predators all along. And the Zepyrians, they were just prey. The Perseverance's engines flared as it banked hard, its remaining railguns locking onto the Eternal Radiance's retreating silhouette. Weir didn't give the order to fire. First, she wanted them to see, to understand. To remember, Humanity didn't need overwhelming numbers. It just needed one ship, one chance, and the will to keep fighting long after anyone else would have broken. The Zephyrians had thought them weak. Now, as the Perseverance closed in, its battered hull gleaming like a bloodied knife in the void, they learned the truth. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its technology. It was its refusal to surrender, and that was something no alien armada could ever outlast. Section HFY. No safe harbor. The Eternal Radiance's crystalline hull pulsed erratically, its once pristine luminescent panels now flickering like a dying heartbeat. Inside the command spire, Zapkal's primary limbs trembled against the smooth, organic interface of his command pod. His secondary eyes, normally a calm, calculating teal, flared electric blue with panic. This wasn't supposed to happen. The human ship, that single, battered, impossible ship, should have been scrap by now. The Zephyrian armada had thrown everything at it. Plasma lances that could melt battlecruisers, gravity shears designed to snap hulls like twigs, even the forbidden singularity projectors, their containment fields humming with stolen star matter. The Perseverance still came. Its armor was a grotesque patchwork of melted plating and emergency welds, its railgun arrays reduced to half their original number, but its engines burned steady, its course unerring, like a predator that had scented blood. Zapkal's mandibles clicked in distress. He had studied human warfare, their history of attrition, their stubbornness, their persistence hunting tactics, where they ran prey to exhaustion. But he had dismissed it as primitive, a relic of their pre-spaceflight savagery. Now, he understood. They hadn't abandoned the strategy. They had perfected it. On the Perseverance's bridge, Colonel Rachel Weir exhaled slowly, her fingers curling around the edges of her command console. The Zephyrian flagship was retreating, its escort scrambling to regroup. Let them fear. Her crew moved around her in silence, their faces gaunt, their uniforms streaked with coolant and blood. They had been at battle stations for 18 hours straight, just the endless grinding rhythm of survival. Corporal Daniel Kim slumped at his gunnery station, his hands shaking as he recalibrated the last functional railgun. His left eye was swollen shut from a conduit rupture hours ago, but he hadn't left his post. None of them had. Weir didn't need to give orders anymore. They all knew what came next. Keep hunting. Keep pushing. Don't let them breathe. Zapkal's scientist, Quilex, staggered into the command spire, his crystalline carapace dulled by stress. "High Commander," he rasped, his voice modulator crackling. "The human vessel, their power signatures. I see them." Zapkal snapped. "No, you don't." Quilex tertiary limbs gestured wildly at the holographic readout. "Their reactor, it's overloading deliberately." Zapkal's blood ran cold. Humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to end you. The Perseverance wasn't just chasing them. It was hurting them. Straight into the kill zone. Weir watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Zephyrian fleet was clustering now, their elegant crystalline formations collapsing into a panicked swarm. Let them think they were regrouping. Let them think they had a chance. The Perseverance's core throbbed beneath her feet. Its fusion reactor pushed far beyond safety limits. Alarms blared, ignored. Warnings flashed, dismissed. They had one shot left, and she intended to take it. Zapkal's command pod shuddered as the Eternal Radiance's system screamed in protest. The human ship was closing too fast, its trajectory a suicide run. Not suicide. The realization struck him like a plasma bolt. This wasn't just a battle, it was a message, one the galaxy would never forget. Weir's hand hovered over the final command sequence. The Zephyrians had thought humanity weak. Now they would learn the truth. Sometimes, one ship was all it took. She input the code, the Perseverance's core went critical, and the void burned. The Perseverance was no longer a ship. It was a spear, a blade of fire and fury hurled into the heart of the Zephyrian armada. its dying core a supernova contained within a hull of battered steel and human defiance. The Zephyrians had seen human desperation before, had studied their wars, their reckless charges, their last stands, but this was different. This was calculated. Colonel Rachel Weir watched the tactical display as the distance between her ship and the eternal radiance collapsed into nothing. The Zephyrian flagship loomed ahead, its crystalline hull shimmering with blue-green energy, its geometric spires and organic curves, a testament to a civilization that had never known true desperation. They had never been hunted, not like this. Zapkal's mandibles twitched as the human vessel surged toward them, its fusion core a pulsing, unstable star. The eternal radiance's systems blared warnings in harmonic chimes, their usual elegance replaced by frantic dissonance. This was not possible. The humans were supposed to break, to flee, to surrender. Instead, they had turned their own destruction into a weapon. The realization struck him with cold, crystalline clarity. The Perseverance was not trying to escape. It was aiming. The Perseverance's hull groaned as the reactor's containment fields destabilized. The metal warping under forces it was never meant to endure. Alarms shrieked, their voices drowned beneath the deeper, more terrible sound of the core's death throes. Weir didn't flinch. She had known the cost. The Zephyrians had thought humanity weak because they bled, because they felt fear, because they fought with everything they had instead of cold, logical efficiency. But that was their mistake. Humans understood sacrifice. Quilek's data streams erupted in cascading failure as the human ship's energy signature spiked beyond measurable thresholds. The Zephyrian scientist had studied human warfare, had cataloged their tactics, their weapons, their limitations. This was not in the simulations. The Perseverance was no longer broadcasting distress signals or surrender codes. It was broadcasting silence. And that silence was more terrifying than any war cry. Corporal Daniel Kim braced himself against the shuddering bulkhead, his fingers white, knuckled around a handhold. The deck plates burned beneath his boots, the air thick with the scent of scorched metal and ozone. He had known this was a one-way trip. They all had, but if this was how it ended, if this was the price of making the galaxy remember, then he would pay it gladly. The eternal radiances, point defenses flared to life, crystalline turrets, unleashing volleys of emerald energy. The beams lanced out, precise, beautiful, lethal. They struck the Perseverance's hull and did nothing. The human ship had stopped caring about damage. It had one purpose left, and it would not be denied. Zapkal's command pod trembled as the distance between the two vessels vanished. The Perseverance filled the viewport now, its battered frame wreathed in the hellish glow of its own dying heart. For the first time in his long, disciplined life, Zapkal felt something alien, something human. The Perseverance's core breached containment, and the void burned, a sphere of white, hot annihilation erupted, swallowing the eternal radiance in an instant. The shockwave rippled outward, shearing through the crystalline formations of the Zephyrian fleet, like a scythe through glass. Ships that had moments before been pristine, elegant, invincible, now shattered into glittering debris, their organic energy cores detonating in sympathetic ruin. The light seared across the black, a funeral pyre for the arrogant and a beacon for the defiant. And when it faded, only silence remained. Quilek's sensors struggled to interpret the aftermath. The eternal radiance was gone. Entire wings of the armada had been erased. The human ship had not just died, it had taken. And the worst part, it had been willing to. The Zephyrian scientist stared at the wreckage, his mind reeling. This was not war as the galaxy understood it. This was something older, something primal, something human far away. In the ruins of the battlefield, a single data buoy flickered to life. It broadcast no distress signal, no plea for mercy, just 3 words, repeating on an encrypted loop, "Remember the Perseverance." And the galaxy would. The silence that followed the battle was not the quiet of peace. but the stillness of a predator waiting in the dark. Quilex's crystalline fingers trembled as they hovered over the sensor display, the holographic debris field rotating before him in jagged, shimmering fragments. The eternal radiance, once the jewel of the Zephyrian Armada, was now nothing more than a graveyard of shattered luminescent alloy, its pulsing blue-green energy cores reduced to dying embers. The human ship, the Perseverance, had not just fought, it had unmade, and it had done so with terrifying efficiency. The scientist's mind raced, his neural tendrils flickering with distress. The Zephyrians had waged war for millennia, elegant, calculated, a dance of superior technology and disciplined formations. But this had been something else entirely. The humans had not merely engaged in battle. They had hunted, and they had won. Zakel's command chamber. 3 solar cycles later, the High Commander stood before the Grand Conclave, his carapace dulled by exhaustion, his once proud crest of bioluminescent spines lying flat against his skull. The chamber around him was a cathedral of living crystal, its translucent walls pulsing with the subdued glow of a species in mourning. The Conclave's voices were a discordant hum of disbelief. One ship? How could a single vessel? Their technology was inferior. Their tactics? Zakel silenced them with a single pulse of his neural tendrils. The chamber dimmed. "You misunderstand," he said, his voice resonating through the crystalline lattice beneath their feet. "It was not their technology that defeated us." He activated the holoprojector. The battle played out once more. The Perseverance, a blunt, angular thing of gray steel and scorched armor, weaving through the Zephyrian formation like a predator through tall grass. It had taken damage. Gods, how it had taken damage. But it had never stopped, never hesitated. And then, the final moment, the human ship, its engines failing, its hull breached, had not fled. It had lunged straight into the heart of the eternal radiance. The explosion had been catastrophic. Zakel let the recording fade. "They do not fight as we do," he said softly. "They do not think as we do." A murmur rippled through the conclave. Quilex stepped forward, his voice barely above a subsonic hum. "I have analyzed their historical records, their evolution, their wars." He hesitated. "They are persistence hunters." The chamber fell silent. Persistence hunting, a concept so alien, so brutal, that it took the conclave a full cycle to comprehend. A predator that did not rely on speed, nor strength, but on sheer, unrelenting endurance. A creature that would follow its prey for days, until exhaustion claimed it, until it could do nothing but collapse and wait for death. The humans had not fought to destroy a ship. They had fought to break a species. Human Remnant Outpost, edge of former Battlezone Colonel Rachel Weir, stood in the dim glow of a flickering holoscreen, her face lined with exhaustion, her hands steady. The message from the buoy had reached them. Remember the Perseverance. And she had. They all had. Corporal Daniel Kim limped into the room, his cybernetic leg whirring softly. "They're calling it the new doctrine," he said, his voice rough. Rachel didn't look up. "I know." The galaxy had learned. One message: humanity did not need to win every battle. They just needed to make sure the enemy remembered the cost of fighting them. Final transmission. Zephyrian High Archives recommend immediate cessation of hostilities. Reclassification of human species. Threat level Omega. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. The transmission ended somewhere. In the void between stars, a single buoy continued to pulse. Remember the Perseverance, and the galaxy would. Epilogue. The echo in the void. The buoy's signal did not fade. It pulsed through the black, a metronome of defiance, its transmission slicing through calm relays, slipping past encrypted channels, whispering into the ears of every species that had once dismissed humanity as reckless, as weak, as expendable. On the bridge of the Zareth's judgment, a surviving Zephyrian dreadnought. High Tactician Valix stared at the decoded message for the third time. His mandibles twitched, a nervous tic he had not possessed before the battle. Before them, his second in command, a younger warrior whose carapace still gleamed unscarred, dared to speak. "Tactician, the consensus demands our return. The war is over." Valix's voice was a rasp. He turned, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the dim glow of the buoy's signal on the view screen. "No, it is not over. It will never be over." The younger Zephyrian hesitated, but the humans did not win, Valix interrupted. "That is the horror of it. They did not need to." He gestured to the tactical display, where the wreckage of the Perseverance still drifted, a tomb for both its crew and the Zephyrian armada that had tried to erase it. The cost had been calculated. The numbers were irrefutable. For every human ship destroyed, the Zephyrians had lost 3. For every human life extinguished, 100 Zephyrian warriors had followed. And now, the buoy's signal, unaltered, unchallenged, spread like a virus. Valix exhaled, the sound like wind through dead branches. "They do not fight for victory. They fight for memory." His claws tightened around the edge of the console somewhere. In the dark, another species would hear the signal. Another empire would study the battle logs. Another would wonder, what happens when we push them? And they would know, because the buoy would tell them. Remember the Perseverance, and the galaxy would.